I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Ivey, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say I have a slightly different take on this than my friend from North Carolina in a variety of ways. I think that the claims about CISA being a giant censorship entity completely misses the mark based on the transcripts that I've seen of testimony that's been given by this committee and to this committee and other committees here in the House. For example, this is a statement from Brandon Wales. He's the CISA Executive Director. CISA does not and has never censored speech or facilitated censorship. Any such claims are patently false. We can go through a few of these others, and we will, including the testimony that I had mentioned a moment ago. For example, Mr. Masterson. Now, Masterson was an interesting individual who came up through the Republican Party in the Ohio State election boards. He now works for Microsoft, but he made a couple of statements with respect to this issue. One, they were never compelled. They never compelled the platforms to take positions or take down information. In other words, they never forced censorship to happen of any kind. No, I don't recall that happening in my experience, no. And there's a couple other quotes from him that I'd like to share on this front too. Do you have any, at any point in your experience working at CISA where you advised that you had the authority to compel a social media company to take any particular action related to any particular content on social media? No, I don't recall that happening in my experience, no. Do you have that, did you ever try to exercise that authority? No, I don't recall ever perceiving that I had that authority. Mr. Stamos, who was just mentioned a moment ago, also has testified here in the House. To be clear, at no time did the EIP censor speech or have access to back-end platform systems or data outside of public content. The EIP did not take down posts or apply labels and had no power to do so. The EIP did not create targeting lists or blacklists of accounts, and the list of accounts included in our reports as the top spreaders of false information were generated by our own analysis, which importantly occurred after the election. Mr. Stamos was the person who the tape was played a moment ago by the chairman. We've got more of those, but I need to move forward because I think on a couple of fronts here, we have to address the reality of what's going on, I think, behind some of this. There are a lot of conspiracy theories that persist that are, in my view, dangerously weakening America's ability to defend itself against foreign attacks from Russia, China, and Iran. Some of these attacks focus on Americans' election and our election apparatus, especially since we haven't fully responded to in the wake of the 2016 and 20 attacks with respect to those elections. In 2017, the Trump administration's national security strategy included a section on information statecraft, naming Russia and China among the adversaries seeking to, quote, weaponize information, close quote, for strategic gain and control. Adversaries of the United States leverage influence operations and disinformation campaigns to degrade confidence in key institutions, sow civil discord, and undermine U.S. pillars of power. For example, Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, I think is a powerful example. I know there's been a lot of political debate about, collusion and other issues, but the Senate Intelligence Committee found that Putin ordered the Russian effort to hack Democratic Party networks and accounts to leak information damaging to Hillary Clinton. There's also information with respect to Iranians trying to do the same thing on the opposite side, posing as Proud Boys to intimidate voters in the 2020 election. That's based on an indictment. The Department of Justice is prosecuting individuals involved in that case. But that's on the other side of this. From my perspective, this isn't a partisan issue. That was an attempt apparently to, in their view, help the Biden campaign. But I also think we have to focus on this because we face internal dangers that can come from the internet and some of the information that's being abused on that front. The January 6th attack against the Capitol was aimed at preventing the lawful and peaceful transfer of power. The internet was used, the social media platforms were used essentially as the principal means of communications for many of those activities. And also some of the, in my view, false conspiracy theories that have grown out of that, like the ghost buses issue that was raised here in this committee a few weeks ago, I think is disinformation that we need to address. The recent Osama bin Laden letter, which got viral on the internet and ended up, I think it had over 2 million views, but essentially was espousing the bin Laden's view that the United States is an evil country, that 9/11 was an appropriate attack on the United States, I'm concerned about the impact it could have, for example, on lone wolf individuals in the United States. And there are other kind of efforts like that that are aimed at reaching out directly to people in the United States to encourage them to engage in terrorist activities. This is an article from the Washington Post, How Osama bin Laden's Letter to America Reached Millions Online. Videos citing the document had been viewed far less than many TikTok posts. Then a journalist made a compilation and posted it on X, causing attention to the manifesto to explode. That was dated November 16, 2023, and I offer it for the record.
Ordered to be submitted.
I think it's important for CISA to continue to not only exist, but continue to operate at full capacity. I know there have been some efforts to reduce its capabilities, but the 2018 and 2020 cycles, the censorship issue, CISA connected election stakeholders to social media platforms in a nonpartisan manner by forwarding election disinformation reporting from election officials of both parties to the relevant platforms. I believe we've got an email here from the RNC that was sent to CISA. This is, again, in an effort to be bipartisan on this front, the RNC detected misinformation that was being circulated in Philadelphia during that campaign cycle that election workers were going to be paid, and that was incorrect. It worked its way up the chain. I didn't put all of the emails on this board here, but at the end of it, they sent it to CISA seeking help into taking down the information so the disinformation wouldn't spread. I don't know if that kind of funding is illegal in Pennsylvania, but I think the main point is that the RNC, at least in that election cycle, didn't view this as some sort of censorship effort. This was just an effort to make sure that they got correct information out to the public. And that's true in other scenarios too. One of the issues that we've seen pop up, false information with respect to elections. If the election's going to happen on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, the government needs to be able to correct that kind of misinformation. Also, there's a point I wanted to make too about this. I think the argument seems to be that CISA was essentially compelling people, these platforms, to remove or edit information that was available on that platform. But all of the emails that we've seen had a disclaimer that was displayed on the screen. Up here, okay. This is attached, and you can see down at the bottom of it there, basically it says, quote, CISA affirms that it neither has nor seeks the ability to remove or edit what information is made available on social media platforms. CISA makes no recommendation about how the information it is sharing should be handled or used by social media companies. Thank you. Social media platforms make their own decisions regarding the content on their platforms, and each have their own rules regarding the labeling and removal of mis and disinformation. Of the posts flagged by the EIP, platforms took action on 35%, 21% were labeled, 13% were removed, 1% were soft blocked. No action was taken on 65% of those. This is not government censorship or censorship by proxy. Social media companies are privately owned and make content decisions based on their terms of service. I also want to raise this issue with respect to the elections that are coming up. State and local officials in these elections are seeking the assistance of not only the federal government, but of each other, because a lot of these challenges that arise have nationwide impact and affect their different states, even if the misinformation or false information arises somewhere else. So state and local officials from 21 different states requested CISA's assistance leading up to the 2020 election, including Republican officials to address foreign influence operations and disinformation. Kentucky state officials flagged tweets that falsely indicated Democratic votes were being undercounted in favor of Republican votes during a contentious Senate race. A county in Florida, for the supervisor of elections, shared threats emailed to Democratic voters. The Donald Trump campaign and the RNC flagged the misinformation about an RNC volunteer stipend program. We showed that already. According to an April 2023 survey, 85% of local election officials responded that it is beneficial, quote, for CISA to dispel false information about elections by promoting accurate information on election administration and technology, close quote. I will wind this up. I do want to get to the testimony of both panels, but I did want to raise these points about the Missouri v. Biden case. I think it's important to note that the Fifth Circuit put a stay on the rulings that the district court had issued, particularly with respect to the limitations on the government from having interactions with social media platforms. I guess the district court had imposed essentially a total restriction on it. The Fifth Circuit rolled that back. And I think it's fair. I've read some versions of this, and I've read the opinion myself, that some of the opinions, the district court's opinions, information is based on false information or misinformation as well. So I'm hoping that as this case works its way through the courts, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Supreme Court remanded it for additional findings of fact, that a lot of this will be addressed. But the main point I want to make before I wrap up is that I'm concerned that there's been a chilling effect with respect to CISA, the social media platforms, people who are doing research. They're concerned about if they raise their head up, they get in trouble, they get subpoenas, they get doxxed. And we've got a couple of statements with respect to that. But I think it's important for us to make sure that we want to make sure there's no censorship going on. I think that my colleagues on the other side have significantly overstated that based on the transcripts I've seen. But importantly, I think we have to keep in mind that not only do we have to worry about making sure we have the apparatus in place, for example, to deal with child sexual exploitation and terrorism online, but also that we're able to address election issues, other types of foreign attacks that might be encouraging people to engage in terrorism or the like. We have to make sure that we have that capability up and ready to go, that people feel that they can do the work and reach their own conclusions. We might disagree about those conclusions, whether a particular social media platform takes information down or not. I don't know there's going to be universal agreement on all of that, but I think we need to make sure that people feel they can operate in a safe environment, and that includes exercising their First Amendment rights. So, Mr. Chairman, we may draw the line in different places, clearly we do, but I think our ultimate goal is the same. So with that, I yield back.